A freedom salesman, ladies and gentlemen. Freedom salesman. I like this man. I really do. Where is that line? I'm just trying to find it. Apparently, here it is. Malcolm Turnbull, Sam Dastyari, and Scott Ludlam all claim to have something in common with my next guest. They're all libertarians. Closet, apparently. Closet libertarians. What the hell is a closet libertarian? David Leyonhjelm. It's a great name. It gives you some idea of the ferocity that the man has in his heart. Anyway, he's written this. It's called Freedom's Salesman, and he's on the line. Liberal Democrat David Leyonhjelm. How are you, sir?
Good day, Jeremy. How are you?
Are you bearing up?
Yes. We launched the book tonight, and I had nothing to drink beforehand and one drink afterwards, so I'm in pretty good shape, actually.
And Mr. Latham behaved himself?
He did, yes, Mr. Latham.
Did he shake your hand?
Oh, yes, Mark and I are good mates these days.
Yeah.
The other person who helped me launch it was Tony Shepherd,
yes.
From the former head of the Business Council of Australia. And as he pointed out very robustly to the audience, chairman of the, what do they call them, the Giants, the Western Sydney Giants or something, the football team, means nothing to me, I'm afraid, but
no.
other people were impressed.
You don't get lonely because you're the only person representing your party, aren't you? You're
Well, we now have a Liberal Democrat in the upper house of the Western Australian Parliament as well.
Oh.
So I'm not the only one, and we do have aspirations for the South Australian election, Victorian election,
and
New
excellent.
South Wales election.
Tell me about that. We've got one coming up, as you know, in March next year.
Yes.
You're running candidates?
Yes, we certainly are. South Australia is a bit of a tough gig for us because of the Xenophon factor and also it's Corey Bernardi's base, Family First. But, we're libertarians. We believe in small government, low taxes, getting the government out of your pocket and also out of your personal life.
Well, that sounds like my kind of political party.
Yes, well, we're hoping that there's enough South Australians who share that view and we can win a seat in the upper house there. And they've changed the voting system just in the last few weeks, and it actually has made it a little bit more optimistic for us. So I'm feeling, a little optimistic that we might win a seat there. Victoria is a serious proposition. We're registered there. And New South Wales, it's relatively easy for a small party like us to win a seat in the upper house of the New South Wales Parliament. So we're feeling pretty optimistic about it all.
But is it frustrating when you just get one seat here and one seat there, and there you are in the federal sphere? Is your voice, I'm sure your heart is strong enough and brave enough, but do you ever get the feeling that your arguments might get lost?
No, they do. Yes, it is pretty frustrating quite a lot of the time. But you have to learn how to get your own way, even with just one vote. And there are times in the Senate when the government needs my vote, and it doesn't come cheaply. I don't ask for stuff that's how do I put this, directly contrary to the government or impossible to achieve. I mean, I would love to be able to blackmail the government into cutting our taxes and cutting spending and balancing the budget and all that sort of stuff. So I sort of lecture them about those kind of things. But nonetheless, when they come to me and ask for my vote, there are times, sometimes what they're asking for is I have to give it to them no matter what. If it's liberalising something, if it's deregulating something, if it's cutting taxes or cutting spending, I couldn't possibly negotiate over something like that. But there's a lot of other stuff that doesn't fit into that category. And so I say to them, well, look, if you want my vote, you're going to have to do something that will convince me to vote for it. So that might be liberalising something, making something a bit better somewhere else.
Yeah, I saw something the other day, in fact yesterday, about we've agreed to spend $300 million. I just don't think we have the money, but $300 million on trying to control, broadly speaking, infectious diseases in Southeast Asia.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, my God, it's a drop in the bucket anyway. But it's $300 million. And no doubt it's a good cause, but where does it go? $70 million for asylum seekers on Manus Island, and we apparently agreed out of court to a settlement that gave these asylum seekers $70 million because we apparently did the wrong thing or signed the wrong form. I mean, I don't understand where all this money... It's almost as though we, the poor mug taxpayer, is inexhaustible.
Yes, it's one of the banes of my life is pointing out all the time that we are living on borrowed money. We have a deficit of near enough to $40 billion each year after year, and our national debt keeps going up and up and up.
Do you know what it is at the moment? Somebody told me it was something like $3 trillion or $500 trillion. It's mind-boggling.
$500 billion, $500 to $600 billion. I'm not exactly sure of the figure either, and projected to hit $700 billion within 4 years. It's shameful. I mean, the problem is that it's leaving the younger generation a debt that they're going to have to pay off. And we're not even getting close to paying it off. We're still building it up at the moment. That's the tragedy of it. And so spending money on fripperies, frivolities, giving money away to other countries that don't use it well, that's all adding to it. And then, of course, there's the number of people who don't pay tax, the number of people who hold their hand out for welfare when they're not poor. It's endless. It's exceedingly frustrating. The problem is that, I don't dispute the need to look after those who are genuinely out of luck, genuinely poor. The safety net is important.
Well, that's what it's there for.
That's what it's there for.
But it's not a hammock.
No, it's not a hammock. Exactly right. And the truth is that if people had more control over their own lives, more responsibility for their own lives, if they didn't have so much of their money taken in tax and they spent the money that would otherwise be taken in tax to look after themselves in various ways, they would actually lead happier, healthier, more prosperous, more fulfilling lives.
More responsible lives.
Exactly so, more responsible. And it's not good that there is this perception being created that the government is there to sort of save you from being, fat, lazy and ugly, I think Michael Costa said. So what's the government going to do about it? It's quite a tragedy.
Yeah. I find it very hard to believe that Liberal or Labor or Independents could find fault with your argument that you've just explained. How could anybody argue against the common sense of what you're saying?
Well, they're both into redistribution of money, Labor more than Liberal. But
money is best left in the hands of the people who earned it, not government.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true, but you never know that in the Parliament. Liberals say that, Labor's not so quick to say it, and yet, what do we get from the current Liberal government? An increase in taxes on the banks, increasing taxes on superannuation, increases in GST on low-value imports, and removal of tax concessions of various kinds, which are effectively a tax increase anyway, and very little in the way of spending cuts, very, very little. And then when they get legislation through the Senate, say on school education or childcare, they buy off the crossbenchers, the other crossbenchers, with additional funds that they throw at it, several $1 billion actually. So, their taxes are going up, but spending's also going up.
But you don't despair. That's encouraging. You don't despair at any of this.
Well, somebody's got to argue that fiscal responsibility is important. Someone has to argue that it can't go on. We are heading towards the Greek cliff if we don't do something about it.
Absolutely.
And somebody's got to say it. And there are people in the Liberal Party who know it and who say it quietly, but they're they're a bit muzzled by their party machine, whereas I'm not muzzled by my party.
God
my
bless
party
you.
wants me pushing it as hard as I can.
Yeah. Well, Don Dunstan used to say that his great ambition was to turn South Australia into the Athens of the South. So
Well,
he'd be over the moon.
Yeah, well, we live. Yes, right. Yes, absolutely. He would be saying mission accomplished.
Yes.
But we Libertarians say we're plotting to take over the world and leave everyone alone.
I like that. That's a great slogan. We'll take over the world and leave everybody alone. I like that. Who is your hero? Who were your heroes as you grew up?
Well, probably Milton Friedman in sort of philosophical terms. Milton Friedman was a Nobel Prize-winning economist, but he was also a wonderful communicator. He did articles and did little videos, and a TV show called Free to Choose. And he was just brilliant at explaining things. And I found him incredibly convincing. You know, he didn't try to overcomplicate stuff, didn't use technical words. He just said, why do we need the government to do these things? Aren't we better off if we do them for ourselves? And it was so compelling. Yes. I used to think, why doesn't everybody think the same way?
Isn't it interesting that politicians, as we know them today, are not terribly good at persuading and arguing a case, even though many of them are lawyers?
No, that's right. Getting into politics for the most part is, your skills as a politician are not as important as your skills at greasing your way through the party machinery, the Liberal Party and Labor Party, and to some extent Greens party. The people who get elected are the ones who know how to organise their numbers and so forth in their respective parties. Their ability to swing the public over to their way of thinking, to change minds, to present a convincing argument for their point of view is really a very secondary requirement. Yeah. They have to be able to speak, of course, but what they speak about doesn't matter that much.
What did you do before you got into politics or got interested in politics?
Well, I've had my own business for the last 26 years.
Well, that's a very important thing for me, because most of these people have never had to meet a payroll and don't really know too much about employing people.
Yes, you're quite right. A lot of them have been political staffers and lawyers and union officials and things like that, and never been at the pointy end of making a buck. But, so I used to be a veterinarian years ago.
Really?
And then I established an agribusiness consulting company, and I was running that. I still have it, although I've downsized it very substantially, but I was running that up to the point I got elected in the 2013 election. It's still there, and it's still running, and my wife is involved, and I have a consultant or a contractor who helps with it. And on the weekends, I do a bit of it myself.
Who on the world stage do you admire? The Angela Merkels and the Trumps, and because we're in a very interesting position here. We're kind of seeing almost the political class being rejected by and large, and we, the people, are looking for something different. We're not probably quite sure what it is, but we'll kind of know it when we see it, or know it when we find it.
We are, although I worry a little bit about that thinking. It's a little bit of a messiah complex.
Yeah.
It leads to potential for dictators as well. I'm somewhat worried about this disillusionment with democracy in general, and this perception that what we need is a strong leader and all that kind of stuff. I have to say, amongst the current world leaders, I can't think of anybody who inspires me much. Ronald Reagan and Maggie Thatcher I found pretty inspiring. Yeah. They set out lowering taxes, deregulating their economies, reducing government spending, balancing the books, and generally making their countries far more prosperous. And for a couple of decades after they were in office, their countries prospered fantastically. It wasn't until the GFC arrived that prosperity came to an end. And I think Maggie Thatcher in her housewifely way, and Ronnie Reagan in his very homely, down-to-earth style were wonderful ambassadors for individual responsibility and the government doing less, and each of us doing more for ourselves.
Well, I congratulate you on your ideas, and I hope your party ends up being the largest in the country. I really do. What was that line? What was that line again? Elect us, and we'll keep out of your way.
Yeah.
What did you say?
We're plotting to take over the world and leave everyone alone.
I love that. We're plotting to take over the world and leave everybody alone. I think that's fantastic. Thank you, David. Good luck with the book.
Thank you very much, Jeremy.
And it's out today, is it?
Yes, it's available today, called Freedom Salesman.